Thank you. Thank you. Walking up this street 2 years ago was the proudest moment of my life. A new Labour government, the first in 14 years. A page in our country's history turned after years of disappointment and despair. The chance to change the lives of millions of people for the better. That's what I came into politics for. The journey to that point was not easy. 6 years ago, I inherited a Labour Party that was politically, financially, and morally bankrupt. I was told time and time again that my party was finished, that we were consigned to history, that a majority at the general election, let alone a landslide majority, was impossible. But we proved those people wrong because we changed our party, ripping out the poison of anti-Semitism, restoring trust on the economy, defence and national security, and becoming a party that once again stood proudly with, not against, our national flag. The hard work of change was with a singular purpose, not power for power's sake, but to change Britain for the better, to build a fairer country with dignity and respect, where everyone is seen, everyone is valued, wealth and opportunity for all, not just the privileged few. And look at what we've achieved in just 2 years. An economy that is stronger, growing faster than our peers, wages rising faster than inflation in every single month since we came to power, investment secured, infrastructure being built, an end to austerity, with the fastest fall in NHS waiting lists for 17 years, the biggest improvement in rights for workers and renters in a generation, the biggest uplift in defence spending since the Cold War, small boat crossings falling, asylum hotels closing, protecting young people from social media, and 500,000 children being lifted out of poverty because of the choices that I made. Our reputation in the world restored, with Britain once again standing up for decency, respect, and the rule of law, securing trade deals, standing with Ukraine, standing up for our values, and rebuilding our relationship with our allies in Europe. Change promised by a Labour government, change fought for by a Labour government, change delivered by a Labour government. But I know the question being asked now is not who was best placed to change the Labour Party, to take us into power and to begin the vital work of improving lives for millions of people. Those questions have been answered. The question my party is asking now is whether I am best placed to lead us into the next general election. I have heard the answer of my parliamentary party to that question, and I accept that answer with good grace. Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party. I have spoken to His Majesty the King this morning to inform him of my decision. I will ask the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party to set out a timetable with nominations opening on the 9th of July and completed by the summer recess. In the case of a contest, this will ensure a new leader is in place before Parliament returns in September. I will remain in post as Prime Minister until the contest is complete, and I will do everything I can to ensure an orderly handover of power. I will also give my successor my full and unequivocal support, knowing that they will inherit a Britain that is far stronger and fairer than the one I inherited 2 years ago, better prepared for the challenges ahead, and better able to ensure the Labour Party secures a second term in office. I want to thank all of those friends and colleagues who have been at my side for these past 6 years or so, for their incredible commitment, service and support. I want to thank the brilliant Number 10 staff and our country's extraordinary civil service who dedicate their lives to public service. And when I leave the biggest job in the country, I shall spend more time on the most important job, being the best husband I can to my fantastic wife, Vic, who has been a rock by my side through good times and bad, and being the best dad I can to my beautiful children, who are my pride and my joy. Thank you very much.
Keir Starmer resigning as leader of the Labour Party. An emotional speech, holding hands with his wife Victoria as he re-entered Downing Street. He listed his achievements, he talked about what he'd done as leader, things that he was proud of as Prime Minister. But he said that the question his party is now asking is whether he was best pleased to lead them into the next election. He said that he'd heard the answer, and as a result, he was going to resign. Beth, your reflections on the speech?
Well, look, it was a very well-constructed speech. I'll just take you through it. I mean, he talked at the start about rebuilding the Labour Party. He said that after the 2019 general election, Labour was consigned to history. He said that people told him it was impossible to win a general election. He then went on to do this, and he said, my objective was to build a fairer country with dignity and respect. The second section of that speech was about his achievements, and this is why I think he is probably very sore about being forced out of office. He talked about the economy. He talked about an end to austerity, falling waiting lists in the NHS. He talked about small boat crossings falling. He talked about lifting 500,000 children out of poverty and rebuilding international relations. So he ran through his achievements, but then he got to the crunch of the speech, which was clear when he said, the question is whether I am the person to lead the Labour Party now and into the next general election. He said, my parliamentary party have given me the answer, and as such, I am resigning as leader of the Labour Party. He then went on to say that he accepted that answer with good grace. He said that he had spoken to the King, and then he said it was up to the National Executive Committee of the... You can hear them applauding him inside. You can hear that, can't you? Just everyone's gone in now, and you can hear very loud applause as I imagine he's now going around the team, and I imagine there are tears in there.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear it over the hymns that seem to be blaring from the other side of Downing Street.
He then, just in terms of what happens next, he then said he's asking the National Executive Committee of the Labour Party to set out a timetable from the 9th of July to recess, so quite a short period. And he said in case of a contest, it will ensure the new leader is in place before Parliament returns in September. And he said, I will remain in post until that process is over. I give my successor my full support. And reading from that, Sophie, I think recess is about July the 16th, 17th. So it might be, if there's no contender other than Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham will become Prime Minister in mid-July. If there is a contest, likely Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister at the beginning of September. But then it was the bit at the end, the emotion at the end. People always talk about Keir Starmer as being an emotionless person. He's not. He just covers it very, very well. I mean, I don't know if it's lawyer training and being in a courtroom, but then he spoke of his family and he said, when I leave the biggest job in the country, I'm going to spend more time on the most important job, being the best husband I can to Vic, my fantastic wife, who's been a rock by my side through good times and dad, and being the best dad I can to my beautiful children, who are my pride and my joy. And at that point, you could hear his voice breaking. Do you remember Theresa May when she talked about the country I love, and honoured to serve the country I love, and her voice broke? And Vic, I was looking at Vic, was just there, and she was fighting back the tears, as was he. And with that, he thanked everybody. He had a massive roar of applause. Victoria came over and in they went. So, look, a very dignified speech. We were talking about whether he feels anger, if he does privately, none of that on display. People were saying he would put the best interests of the country first. That's clearly what he's done. I'll stay on as PM. I'm not going to fight a race. He's not resigned as an MP at the moment, and he's just seen the writing on the wall. And that's what I was saying about the Friday, those meetings. By the time he got to Chequers, really it was probably about talking that through and about looking at the different options and then coming to the conclusion that he didn't command the support of the party. So that must have been an extremely difficult speech for someone that has been Labour leader for 6 years, took them from a terrible election defeat in 2019, got them back in office with a mega majority. I mean, second only to Tony Blair, to 2 years in, being forced out of office by a party panicking about the lack of delivery and also about the rise of reform and losing their seats, and also losing the country to reform. I think that really is what is driving MPs. I don't think it's an animosity to Keir Starmer per se.
And that's kind of what he was reflecting on when he was saying that the question that the party is asking is about the next election, that kind of political reality. I mean, there's so much to unpack. I'm very interested to get a bit more on your take on the kind of time frame for things. But I guess my other reflection was, Keir Starmer came into this job and it felt like the whole of his brand that he wanted to project as Prime Minister was a public servant, someone who was committed to public service and doing the right thing. And I felt like that kind of ran through this speech as well, whether people think he did or not or achieved that. I think people have different views. But, saying that he accepts the verdict of his party with good grace.
Yes.
Whoever is the next leader will get his full support.
And I think part of the difficulty that Keir Starmer has faced personally in office is he said, I'm going to be different from other politicians. I'm going to put public service before personal interest. I'm going to put the country first. I'm not going to have instability. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm going to deliver on my promises. And I'm going to deliver change. And then the sort of scale of the change, the speed, the intensity, the intent, the communication, as time went on, it just didn't deliver on what he promised the electorate, and he has been punished in polling ever since. And as that happened over time, it began to chip away at his authority with the parliamentary party. And I think the turning point for Keir Starmer were two things. I think the winter fuel U-turn was really lasting and damaging. And I think also the U-turn on welfare reform, because that was the point where the party basically faced him down and won. And that was the point that he lost that political authority with the party. I also think part of Starmer's difficulties in Number 10, and we don't talk about it much because for people watching, it's all the people behind the scenes, but there has been such a churn of staff.
And that matters, right?
And of course
it really
matters
does.
Because if you're constantly changing your staff or there's instability in your operation, it distracts people. And it doesn't focus them on what they need to do. And I think at the heart of it, people will say to me that it was the lack of decisiveness from Keir Starmer, that he just didn't drive through decisions. And you saw that in Jess Phillips' resignation, and Wes Steed, you know, where he said where there's decision making, there's dither and delay.
Yeah.
And that has been, you know, and even with John Healey, which I think really was, you know, maybe the final nail in the coffin, when, you know, on the one hand, Keir Starmer says national security is my first concern and I will do whatever it takes to keep the country safe. And then he comes up with a proposal that is quite short of what the defence sector's saying, and which his defence secretary, who actually was loyal, says is not enough, so he steps down. So it's like everything he touches, it didn't quite work out. And at some point, the party say, we've got to change. And he's had to reluctantly accept that. I think even a week ago, if he could have carried on, I think he absolutely would have carried on. And as I said earlier, genuinely, I think when I've had private conversations with those around him, that he thinks, given what's going on in the world with the Iran conflict, with Ukraine still going on, the oil crisis, the Strait of Hormuz, the complexity around that, I think he really thinks that he is the man to lead the country through that. But that was the argument he wanted to make to MPs. But when you lose your defence secretary over not keeping the country safe to the extent the defence secretary thinks you should, that blunts that argument as well.
This is it.